It begins quietly, without the roar of an explosion or the flash of fire. The enemy is microscopic, invisible, and it's already everywhere. Hospitals across the world are facing a silent epidemic, one that doesn't make headlines every day, but which could one day define the end of modern medicine. These are the superbugs, bacteria so resistant, so adaptive, that they've turned the miracle of antibiotics into a fading relic of the 20th century. According to the World Health Organization, by the year 2050, antimicrobial resistance could claim more lives than cancer, over 8 million deaths per year. And yet, outside the sterile walls of hospitals and research labs, few people realize how close we are to a global catastrophe. The story of the world's fight against these microscopic killers is not one of future prediction. It's a war already in progress. Sao Paulo, Brazil, 2023. Morning light spills through a small apartment window. Vinicius Zacchia, a young professor and online science communicator, adjusts his razor before class. It's a normal day until a small cut on his chin starts to sting. Hours later, it's red and swollen. By nightfall, it burns with pain. "I thought it was nothing," he would later say, "just a shaving cut." But within days, the wound turned dark and blistered. The infection spread fast. Doctors soon discovered the cause, MRSA, a strain of Staphylococcus aureus resistant to methicillin, penicillin, and most standard antibiotics. "It shocked me," Vinicius says in an interview. "I had never even heard of a superbacteria, and suddenly, I was fighting for my life." Doctors had one final option: a rare antibiotic so strong that each small vial cost nearly 1,200 reais, roughly $250. His recovery was slow, painful, and frightening, but Vinicius survived. Many others are not as lucky. Across the world, similar stories unfold every day. A newborn in India dies of an infection doctors can't stop. An elderly woman in Italy loses a leg to a wound that refuses to heal. A soldier in Afghanistan survives a bomb but dies from an infected scratch. Superbugs don't respect wealth, borders, or technology. They thrive wherever antibiotics are misused. And today, that means everywhere. Hospitals, farms, food industries, even the soil beneath our feet have become breeding grounds for resistant strains. The more we use antibiotics, in humans, in animals, even in crops, the stronger these microscopic survivors become. In a dimly lit lab in Geneva, Dr. Marcela Bandera, an infectious disease specialist, stares at petri dishes glowing under ultraviolet light. Inside them, colonies of bacteria resistant to nearly every known drug. "The bacteria adapt faster than our science," she says, her voice calm but heavy. "Each time we develop a new antibiotic, they find a new defense. It's evolution, accelerated by our own mistakes." She explains how these superbugs work: mutations, gene exchanges, microscopic instructions that jump between bacteria, spreading resistance like wildfire. "The more antibiotics we use," she says, "the faster they learn. It wasn't always this way." In 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, changing medicine forever. For decades, antibiotics were humanity's secret weapon, curing infections that once meant certain death. But by the 1980s, the cracks began to show. Overprescription, agricultural abuse, and incomplete treatments gave bacteria the time they needed to evolve. By the time the world noticed, it was too late. A 2021 global study estimated that 4.95 million deaths were associated with bacterial resistance that year alone. And the number keeps rising. In a small hospital in Florianópolis, Brazil, the tragedy becomes personal. Damile Beatriz de Graca, 18 years old, had everything ahead of her. A student full of dreams. A minor infection after a routine procedure turned fatal. The culprit, the same Staphylococcus aureus strain that attacked Vinicius. She was young, healthy, and strong. Recalls her mother in tears. How could something so small kill her so fast? Doctors had no answers left. No drug worked. Damile's death shocked her community and became a grim reminder that antibiotic resistance isn't a problem of the future. It's the present. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, In the bustling hospitals of New York, infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fields reviews rising infection charts. The data is staggering. A 460% increase in resistant bacterial cases in just 4 years. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, he says. We've taken antibiotics for granted for too long. Every time we pop a pill unnecessarily, we're helping the enemy evolve. He pauses, then adds, if antibiotics stop working, even for a few months, modern medicine collapses. Surgeries, cancer treatments, childbirth. All of it becomes deadly again. A sterile operating room bathed in cold light. A surgeon's gloved hand reaches for a scalpel. But now, imagine performing surgery in a world without antibiotics. One infection, one contaminated tool, and the patient dies. The World Health Organization warns, we cannot imagine modern medicine without antibiotics. If this pillar falls, everything else will follow. Every cut, every scratch, every simple operation could once again be a game of life or death. Like the 19th century all over again. In a quiet office at the University of Oxford, microbiologist Dr. Helen Chambers studies an ancient bacterium frozen in permafrost. Even bacteria buried for thousands of years can carry resistance genes, she explains. Nature's been preparing for this battle long before we arrived. Her words hint at something unsettling. Antibiotic resistance is not just a medical problem. It's an evolutionary inevitability. Humanity's only hope lies in outpacing evolution itself. As the camera pans out over cities glowing at night, Sao Paulo, London, New York, New Delhi, the narrator's voice grows somber. The war has already begun. We just haven't realized it yet. And while we look to the stars, dreaming of colonizing Mars, the smallest creatures on Earth may be the ones to decide our fate. In the quiet corridors of hospitals, nurses whisper stories of infections that no longer respond to treatment. Doctors exchange glances filled with silent frustration. Each day, a few more patients arrive. Wounds that will not heal, lungs that will not clear, fevers that never break. In one ward of a large hospital in Mumbai, an elderly man lies motionless, his breathing shallow. The infection began in his urinary tract, but soon spread through his bloodstream. Every antibiotic failed. We used everything, says the attending physician, her voice tired. There's nothing left. His family waits outside, desperate, unaware that they are witnessing the kind of death that could become tragically common. These stories repeat themselves across continents. In rural Africa, infections spread in villages where antibiotics are sold without prescriptions. In Europe, livestock are still fed antibiotics to grow faster, breeding invisible armies of resistant microbes. In the United States, emergency rooms are filled with patients whose infections don't respond to the strongest drugs available. The tide is rising, quietly, steadily, relentlessly. It isn't just hospitals that are affected. The bacteria have slipped beyond their walls, into the food we eat and the water we drink. Studies show that traces of antibiotic-resistant genes are now found in rivers, lakes, and even the ocean. Each time a person flushes medication down the drain or a farm disposes of animal waste, bacteria adapt and spread their defenses. In 2019, scientists in China detected resistant genes in fish markets along the coast. In Brazil, research teams found superbugs in supermarket meat. They are everywhere, says microbiologist Dr. Lucia Amaral. And the worst part is, most people have no idea they're carrying them. It is a war fought on every front: hospitals, farms, homes, cities. A battle so vast that humanity itself has become the battlefield. For decades, pharmaceutical companies have been quietly retreating from the fight. Developing antibiotics is expensive and rarely profitable. While drugs for chronic diseases generate steady revenue, antibiotics are used briefly, often reserved for emergencies. Many companies stopped producing them altogether. Dr. David Uip, one of Brazil's leading infectious disease experts, puts it bluntly, "We are running out of options. There are no new antibiotic classes expected in the next 5 years." His words hang heavy, echoing across global health conferences and research centers. The scientific community knows what this means. 5 years can be a lifetime for bacteria. Time enough for countless generations to evolve, adapt, and render another line of defense useless. The human toll continues to rise. In Bangladesh, a child dies every hour from infections that once were curable. In South Africa, resistant tuberculosis strains claim thousands of lives annually. In Italy and Greece, hospital outbreaks force entire wards to shut down. Each death is more than a statistic. Each one represents a failure not just of medicine but of collective responsibility. Superbugs do not appear overnight. They evolve because of how we live. Every unnecessary antibiotic, every incomplete prescription, every overtreated animal feeds the fire. In a modest clinic in Nairobi, Nurse Lydia Mathoni holds a newborn baby wrapped in cloth. The infant's skin burns with fever. The infection started in the umbilical cord, she explains softly. We've tried every antibiotic we have. Nothing works. The child's mother, sitting nearby, prays in silence. The power flickers, the fan slows, and the room grows hot. Lydia looks at the baby, so fragile, so small, and whispers, "We need help." Moments later, the monitor goes still. Another life lost. Another tiny heartbeat silenced by something too small to see. Meanwhile, far away in a high-tech research center in Stockholm, scientists are trying to understand how to fight back. They examine bacterial DNA under powerful microscopes, searching for weak points. The problem, says geneticist Eric Lund, is that bacteria share information faster than we can decode it. He shows a sample on a computer screen. This strain was isolated in 2015, he explains. It resisted 3 antibiotics back then. Now it resists 12. His colleague, Dr. Hannah Schoberg, adds, "It's like teaching a child every language in the world. Once they know how to survive, they can adapt anywhere." But even here, among brilliant minds and advanced machines, there's a sense of urgency, a feeling that humanity is racing against time. In the world of agriculture, the crisis is equally alarming. Farmers, trying to prevent disease in animals, have used antibiotics for decades as a cheap insurance policy. Chickens, pigs, and cattle are routinely fed small doses to keep them healthy and growing faster. But in doing so, bacteria in their guts mutate, developing resistance that can transfer to humans through food. In Denmark, a country that banned most agricultural antibiotic use, infection rates in animals dropped dramatically, proof that change is possible. But in other nations, especially in Asia and South America, enforcement is weak. People think antibiotics are vitamins, says Dr. Carlos Figueiredo, a veterinarian in Brazil. They give them to animals every day. It's part of the culture now. What few realize is that every misuse creates new genetic defenses, turning farms into laboratories for the next generation of superbugs. The economic damage is staggering. The World Bank estimates that antibiotic resistance could push millions into poverty by 2050, as medical costs rise and productivity collapses. Surgeries become riskier. Common infections require longer hospital stays. The global economy, already fragile, faces losses in the trillions. But beyond the numbers lies something far more unsettling: the collapse of trust in medicine itself. If a doctor can no longer promise that antibiotics will work, what happens to the very idea of treatment? Inside a crowded lecture hall in London, medical students listen as Professor Helen Chambers speaks. "When antibiotics fail, so does everything we take for granted," she says. "Organ transplants, cancer chemotherapy, even childbirth, all depend on antibiotics to prevent infection. Without them, the entire system falls apart." She pauses, scanning the young faces before her. We are standing at the edge of a post-antibiotic world, and most people still believe it's science fiction. The students write in silence. A generation of future doctors, aware that they might enter a world where old cures no longer save lives. But even as the crisis deepens, there are glimmers of hope. In Japan, researchers are experimenting with phage therapy, using viruses that infect bacteria to destroy resistant strains. In the United States, scientists are engineering synthetic antibiotics based on artificial intelligence. In the Netherlands, doctors are reviving forgotten natural compounds found in soil. These efforts may hold the key to survival. But every breakthrough takes time, And time is the one thing humanity no longer has. A chilling realization spreads through the scientific community. The era of easy cures is over. The golden age of antibiotics, the century when humanity felt invincible against disease, may be coming to an end. Doctor UIP's warning echoes once more. We cannot imagine modern medicine without antibiotics. If this pillar collapses, everything will collapse with it. In the distance, hospital alarms continue to sound, one after another, like echoes of a future already unfolding. The year is 2030, and for many doctors, it already feels like the future they once feared has arrived. In hospitals across the globe, the scenes repeat with haunting familiarity. Intensive care units filled with patients whose infections no longer respond to anything. Surgeons hesitate to operate. Mothers fear childbirth. A scratch, a cough, a routine dental procedure. All potential death sentences in a world losing its last lines of defense. In Sao Paulo, Dr. Marcela Bandeira stands before a patient's chart, her face pale with exhaustion. The infection began after an appendectomy, a simple surgery that should have ended with full recovery. But the bacteria found their way into the wound, and none of the antibiotics worked. We've tried meropenem, vancomycin, colistin, she says softly. It's resistant to everything. The patient is a young man, barely 20. His family stands outside, praying for a miracle that medicine can no longer deliver. It's like watching someone drown and not having a rope to throw, Marcela whispers. Across the world, other doctors share her despair. The miracle drugs that once transformed medicine into a triumph of science are failing, one by one. In the United States, the Centers for Disease Control reports outbreaks in major cities. In Los Angeles, a hospital ward is locked down after a deadly strain of Klebsiella pneumoniae spreads among patients. In New York, resistant E. coli contaminates the water supply of a nursing home, killing 12 elderly residents. The government issues warnings. Pharmaceutical stocks tumble. But the public, still reeling from other crises, struggles to grasp the scale of what's happening. News anchors call it a slow-motion pandemic. Scientists call it the end of modern medicine. In Nairobi, Lydia Muthoni, the nurse who lost the newborn in Block 2, is now part of a volunteer program distributing educational kits about antibiotic misuse. She walks from village to village, showing families how resistance develops. She demonstrates hand-washing techniques, sanitation methods, and the importance of finishing prescribed doses. But her voice trembles when she says, "Sometimes, I wonder if we're already too late." She meets a farmer who still gives his chickens antibiotics every day. "They keep them healthy," he insists. Lydia shakes her head gently. "No," she says, "you're making them stronger. Not your chickens, but the bacteria inside them." The farmer laughs. "You can't see them," he says. "How can they be dangerous?" She doesn't answer. She's seen too many invisible enemies. In the laboratories of Stockholm, Eric Lund and Dr. Hannah Schoberg are racing against time. Their research focuses on bacteriophages, viruses that prey on bacteria. If antibiotics were the sword, Eric says, phages might be the scalpel. They inject samples into bacterial cultures, watching as the phages attack and destroy the resistant cells. For a moment, there's hope until a new mutation appears on the monitor. "They've adapted again," Hannah murmurs, pressing her fingers to her forehead. "It's like trying to hit a moving target," Eric says, "and it never stops moving." Still, they persist. Each night, the two scientists stay long after the others have gone home, surrounded by the soft hum of machines and the faint glow of screens. Humanity's war is being fought in silence, in petri dishes and gene sequences, while outside, the world remains unaware of how close it stands to collapse. The crisis begins to affect daily life. In Paris, a woman is refused cosmetic surgery, too risky. In Tokyo, a hospital cancels all elective operations. In India, the sale of antibiotics is restricted, sparking black markets where counterfeit drugs thrive. Some people hoard old prescriptions, swallowing pills without knowing what they do. And as the antibiotics run out, superstition fills the void. On social media, conspiracy theories explode, The pharmaceutical companies created this on purpose. It's a global plot. Natural herbs can cure everything. Desperate, millions turn to unproven remedies. Honey, garlic, silver water, and internet cures. Some even travel to clinics promising miracle phage treatments for thousands of dollars. Many never return. In the middle of this growing storm, Vinicius Zacchia, the Brazilian man who nearly died from a resistant infection years ago, becomes a global advocate. On his social media channels, he shares his story with passion and fear. "I was lucky," he says in one video, "but luck won't save everyone." He speaks to millions about the dangers of misuse, about the need for global awareness. His followers grow rapidly. People begin tagging him in posts from hospitals, sharing photos of loved ones lost to resistant infections. The comment sections are filled with grief and disbelief. "I can't believe my daughter died from a urinary infection," one user writes. "It was supposed to be simple." Vinicius reads every message, feeling the weight of a tragedy spreading faster than any virus. Meanwhile, world leaders finally begin to react. Emergency summits are held. The World Health Organization declares antibiotic resistance a global health emergency. At the United Nations, representatives debate funding for new research programs. This is not a distant threat, one delegate warns. It's happening now, but politics moves slower than bacteria. Nations argue about patents, costs, and intellectual property rights. Pharmaceutical CEOs promise innovation but demand billions in subsidies. By the time agreements are signed, more lives are lost. The truth becomes painfully clear. The world was warned for decades, and still it waited too long. Hospitals begin implementing strict isolation protocols. Staff dress in full protective gear, reminiscent of scenes from the COVID-19 pandemic. Only this time, the enemy isn't viral but bacterial and far more cunning. Dr. Marcela Bandera walks through the corridor, her gloved hands trembling as she checks on her patients. A new case has arrived, a woman in her 30s, post-cesarean infection, resistant to every antibiotic on the list. "She's conscious," Marcela tells the nurse, "but she won't be for long if we can't control the spread." The nurse nods silently. They both know what comes next. As the woman's fever spikes, Marcela stares at the 4-line, a hollow tube delivering nothing but hope. She looks away, fighting back tears. "We used to call them miracle drugs," she says softly. "Now they're just stories we tell." Elsewhere, in a classroom in Nairobi, Lydia shows a group of children drawings of bacteria and viruses. "These are our invisible neighbors," she tells them. "Some help us, others hurt us, but they all listen to what we do." The children giggle, but she continues. "If we use medicine wrongly, the bad ones become stronger." One boy raises his hand. "Can we stop them?" he asks. Lydia smiles sadly. "Maybe not stop them," she says, "but we can learn to live smarter than them." Her words echo with the quiet wisdom of someone who has already seen too much loss. Back in Stockholm, Hannah and Eric make a breakthrough. After months of failure, one of their engineered phages successfully kills a multi-drug-resistant strain without triggering a countermutation. The lab erupts in cautious celebration. "It's just one strain," Eric says, grinning. "But it's a start," Hannah replies. They send samples to labs in Germany and Japan for verification. If results hold, it could be the first real progress in years. Yet even as hope flickers, the two scientists know that mass production and approval could take a decade, time the world doesn't have. Still, for the first time, they feel a sense of direction. Humanity's fight isn't over yet, but the social consequences are already unraveling societies. Insurance companies refuse coverage for high-risk infections. Airlines screen passengers for recent hospital visits. Fear begins to shape behavior. Parents refuse to send their children to school after outbreaks of resistant strep throat. Couples postpone having babies. Dentists report mass cancellations. The very fabric of everyday life starts to fray. A silent epidemic of anxiety spreads, not caused by bacteria, but by the realization that humanity's greatest medical safety net is disappearing thread by thread. And yet, there are still those who choose to fight. In a hospital in Manila, nurses organize themselves to sterilize reusable equipment with old-fashioned methods. In Lagos, medical students launch awareness campaigns. In Croatia, retired doctors come back to work, training young physicians in infection control. Human resilience, tested once again, refuses to die quietly. As night falls on cities around the world, hospital windows glow like stars, each one a small outpost in a vast, ongoing war against the unseen. The year is 2035. The headlines are no longer warnings, they're obituaries. Superbug crisis escalates. Hospitals overwhelmed. Post-antibiotic age confirmed. Humanity's miracle century has ended. In Sao Paulo, Dr. Marcela Bandera watches as her hospital transforms from a place of healing into a fortress. Plastic barriers line the corridors. Signs reading isolation zone, MDR infection hang on every door. Families aren't allowed to visit. The smell of antiseptic fills the air. Sharp, artificial, hopeless. She used to fight diseases with skill and confidence. Now every case feels like a gamble with fate. We used to ask how sick they were, she says quietly. Now we ask what bacteria they have. On her rounds, she passes a patient named Helena, who developed sepsis after a cesarean section. The infection spread to her bloodstream, resistant to everything. Marcela checks the monitors, knowing they won't matter much longer. "I'm sorry," she whispers, more to herself than to Helena. The nurse beside her murmurs, "We've lost 3 this morning." Marcela closes her eyes. And it's not even noon. Across the ocean, London's skyline gleams under a pale gray sky. Inside the emergency briefing room of the World Health Organization's European branch, chaos reigns. Maps flash red with outbreaks. Country representatives argue over containment zones. "We cannot isolate entire cities," one shouts. "People will riot." At the head of the table, Dr. Anika Sharma, WHO's lead epidemiologist, leans forward. "If we don't act, there won't be cities left to protect." Her tone slices through the noise. On the screen behind her, a map displays infection hotspots. Red circles blooming like wounds across the globe. Antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis in South Africa. Necrotizing fasciitis spreading in Eastern Europe. India reports 60,000 deaths this month alone. Silence fills the room. No one argues anymore. Dr. Sharma continues, "We must treat this as we treated COVID-19, but on a planetary scale. Travel restrictions, global supply chain coordination, and massive investment in alternative treatments." Someone mutters, "Alternative? You mean fairy tales?" She fixes him with a cold stare. "No, I mean phage therapy, genetic editing, and bacteriocins. It's either science or extinction." Meanwhile, in Stockholm, Eric Lund and Dr. Hannah Schoberg are at the center of that scientific war. Their small research lab has become the world's main hope. Their engineered bacteriophages, viruses designed to attack resistant bacteria, have shown promise in early tests. International agencies pour money into their project, but scaling it up proves nearly impossible. "Every strain needs its own weapon," Eric explains, staring at a wall of DNA sequences. "We're building an arsenal molecule by molecule." Hannah adjusts her glasses and says, "We're fighting evolution with evolution, but evolution doesn't sleep." They've been awake for 3 days straight. The hum of the lab machines feels like the heartbeat of the world. Outside, protesters gather, demanding that the miracle cure be released. They don't understand that the research is far from ready. In the crowd, homemade signs read, "We're dying. Let the scientists try." In Brazil, Vinicius Zacchia, once a survivor, now an activist, becomes the public voice of the crisis. His online campaign, #SaveTheAntibiotics, spreads globally. News outlets invite him to speak, and soon he stands before the UN General Assembly, delivering a speech broadcast to billions. "I'm not a doctor," he begins. "I'm just someone who lived because medicine still worked. But millions no longer have that chance. We used to believe death from infection was ancient history. It's not. It's now." The camera cuts across the room, world leaders listening in uneasy silence. This is not just a medical issue, Vinicius continues. It's an economic issue, a social issue, a human issue. Without antibiotics, surgeries fail. Cancer treatments stop. Modern medicine collapses, and we're watching it happen in real time. He pauses, his voice trembling. The sound of the end won't be an explosion. It will be silence. The silence of hospitals where no one gets better. When he finishes, the hall erupts in applause. But applause doesn't stop bacteria. In Kenya, Lydia Muthoni leads a grassroots resistance. Not with weapons, but with soap, education, and persistence. Her team travels through rural areas distributing hygiene kits and teaching people how to reduce infections before they start. We can't stop bacteria from evolving, she tells a reporter, but we can stop giving them easy battles. One evening, she returns to her makeshift office, a converted shipping container powered by a solar panel. She sits at a desk cluttered with flyers, sanitizer bottles, and hand-drawn posters. The radio crackles with news. Phage trials show early success. She exhales, eyes wet. Maybe, she whispers, maybe there's still time. But in many places, the world has already fallen apart. In Jakarta, overflowing hospitals turn away patients. The black market sells fake antibiotics for gold prices. In Chicago, mass graves are dug outside city limits for victims of a new resistant pneumonia. The world economy begins to falter. Airlines shut down due to biosecurity fears. Shipping halts after infections spread through crew members. Food production collapses as animal diseases spiral out of control. The global order fractures under pressure. Some nations close borders entirely, declaring biosovereignty. Others descend into chaos, with people looting pharmacies for expired pills. Governments call it the Great Retreat, a world shrinking inward, one infection at a time. In a bunker-like conference room beneath Geneva, Dr. Sharma convenes a last-ditch coalition. Around her sit representatives from 10 nations and the heads of leading biotech firms. We have to centralize phage production, she insists, and distribute it free of patents. This isn't about profit. It's about survival. The CEO scoffs. We can't give away proprietary technology. She slams her hand on the table. You can't sell cures in a world that's dying. The room goes silent. After a tense pause, one delegate says, "We'll need military support to protect the facilities." "Then we use it," Sharma replies. "The enemy isn't each other anymore. It's microscopic and it's winning." They call the plan Operation Phoenix, the attempt to rebuild medicine from ashes. Meanwhile, Eric and Hannah's lab becomes a war zone of science. The breakthrough comes when they modify a phage with CRISPR to recognize resistant genes directly. They test it on a sample of Acinetobacter baumannii, one of the deadliest known bacteria. They hold their breath as the results load. The bacteria die, all of them. Hannah lets out a laugh that sounds half like joy, half like relief. "It worked," she whispers. Eric slumps into a chair. "We might have just turned the tide." Within hours, the data spreads across encrypted global networks. Laboratories from Seoul to Buenos Aires replicate the findings. The world's first universal phage prototype has been born, but hope comes too late for many. In Sao Paulo, Marcela holds Helena's hand as the monitors flatline. She's lost more patients in 1 year than in her entire career combined. Her colleagues talk about leaving medicine. She can't blame them. That night, she sits alone in the break room, staring at a photo of her medical school graduation. "We swore to save lives," she says to the empty room, "but we never imagined this." Her phone buzzes. A news alert. Breaking: experimental phage therapy shows global success in trials. Marcela's eyes widen. She stands abruptly, tears blurring her vision. "Please," she whispers, "let it be true." Across continents, governments authorize emergency distribution. Planes carrying refrigerated phage samples lift off under military escort. Scientists work around the clock to prepare doses tailored to local strains. In Kenya, Lydia's clinic receives one of the first shipments. She holds the vial like something sacred. "So small," she says, smiling faintly. "And yet, Maybe this is how we begin again. In Sweden, Hannah and Eric watch from their lab as global data shows infection rates dropping for the first time in a decade. It's working, Eric says softly. For now, Hannah replies. But evolution never ends. They both know this is not victory, just survival. And in New York, under the glow of camera lights, Vinicius delivers a final message to his followers. We may have found a weapon, he says, but this fight doesn't end with science. It ends when we change how we live, how we treat nature, medicine, and each other. He pauses, voice steady. Antibiotics gave us a century of miracles. Maybe now we've earned our reminder. That life, fragile as it is, can't be taken for granted. As the world cautiously steps back from the brink, the night sky over Earth feels different, quieter. From orbit, satellite feeds show hospital lights flickering across continents, tiny signals of endurance in the dark. Dr. Sharma looks at a global heat map showing a decline in outbreaks. We're not safe, she says to her team, but we're alive. Outside, snow falls over Geneva. The world, wounded but wiser, begins to breathe again. Morning light spills across the quiet city of Geneva. Snow dusts the rooftops like a fragile bandage over an injured world. Inside the World Health Organization headquarters, Dr. Anika Sharma stands before a vast digital display, the global infection map that once bled red. Now, for the first time in years, it shows patches of blue. Recovery zones. She exhales, her breath trembling. It's holding, she whispers. It's finally holding. Her assistant smiles weakly. For now. Anika nods. For now is enough. We bought ourselves time. Let's not waste it. Half a world away, in Sao Paulo, Dr. Marcela Bandera walks through the ICU of her hospital. It's quieter than she remembers, not because patients have died, but because fewer are arriving. She pauses beside a bed where a boy of 10 sleeps, recovering from a once-fatal infection treated with phage therapy. His mother sits nearby, her hands clasped in silent gratitude. Marcela adjusts the four, her eyes soft. He's going to make it, she says. The woman's face breaks into tears. They said nothing could save him. Marcela smiles faintly. We were wrong. She leaves the room, her steps slow, thoughtful. The hospital smells of disinfectant and hope. At the nurse's station, someone has taped a piece of paper to the wall. We fought back, and we're still here. In Kenya, Lydia Muthoni watches her village prepare for the harvest season. Children run barefoot through the dirt roads, their laughter echoing over the fields. Infection rates have dropped drastically. Clean water systems, once a luxury, are now standard thanks to international aid. Lydia walks to the community well, where new filtration systems glisten under the sun. We used to fear every cut, every fever, she says to a journalist. Now we fear forgetting what this cost. The journalist asks, do you think people will change? She looks at the sky thinking, they'll try, until the next crisis makes them remember again. In Sweden, Dr. Hanna Sjöberg and Eric Lund stand before a crowd of journalists at the Karolinska Institute. Cameras flash. Their names are now synonymous with survival, the creators of the CRISPR phage that saved millions. Hannah speaks first. We didn't defeat bacteria, she says calmly. We adapted to survive alongside them. That's all evolution ever wanted from us, respect. Eric adds, our greatest enemy wasn't the microbes. It was our arrogance. We believed we could conquer nature. We forgot we're part of it. The audience applauds, but Hannah's eyes drift to the side, where a holographic model of bacteria rotates in silence. Beautiful, alien, eternal. She whispers to herself, they'll be here long after we're gone. Meanwhile, in Rio de Janeiro, Vinicius Zacchia films a new documentary titled Invisible War. Standing on a balcony overlooking the city, he speaks directly to the camera. When I almost died from a simple infection, I thought I was unlucky. But now I see. I was one of the first soldiers in a war humanity didn't even know it was fighting. He walks down to a crowded street market. Vendors sell food wrapped in cleaner packaging, signs advertise antibiotic-free meat, and public posters promote hygiene awareness. This is what survival looks like, he narrates. Not high-tech, not glamorous, just smarter choices. He turns to the camera one last time. We built antibiotics to control life. Now we're learning to live with it. But even as hope rises, shadows linger. In a remote clinic in Bangladesh, a doctor holds a lab report showing a new bacterial strain, resistant to both antibiotics and the new phage therapy. She lowers the paper slowly. It's starting again. Her colleague sighs. It never ended. They send the sample to a global database. Within minutes, labs across continents receive the alert. This time, though, there's no panic, just readiness. The world has built a network. Scientists, governments, and citizens are now connected like an immune system learning from its wounds. Back in Geneva, Anika watches the data flow across her screen. Another mutation, another challenge. But now she smiles. You taught us how to fight, she says softly, addressing the unseen enemy. Now it's our turn to evolve. Her phone rings. A video call from Hannah and Eric. We've already sequenced the new strain, Hannah says. We're updating the phage code. How long? 2 days, Eric replies. Maybe less. Anika exhales in relief. The world's immune system works. In a dim hospital room, Marcella sits with a new patient, a young medical student infected after volunteering in a contaminated zone. She looks at the chart, then at the trembling girl before her. You know, Marcella says gently, when I started, I thought doctors saved people. Now I think we just give them a chance. The girl nods. That's enough, isn't it? Marcella smiles. Yes, that's enough. She prepares the phage injection. Steady hands, quiet resolve. You're going to be fine, she assures her. We're getting better at this. Meanwhile, in classrooms across the world, children learn about the post-antibiotic crisis the same way previous generations learned about world wars. Teachers show them photos, overcrowded hospitals, protest marches, and the first phage labs. This, a teacher explains, was the war fought without bullets. The war that reminded us that every life, no matter how small, matters. A boy raises his hand. Miss, are we safe now? The teacher smiles sadly. We're safer. That's different. The children nod, not fully understanding, but sensing the weight of what was lost and found. Months later, at a memorial in New York, a global ceremony honors the victims of the crisis. A monument rises in Central Park, a towering glass structure filled with microscopic engravings of bacterial DNA, glowing faintly under sunlight. Engraved at the base are the words, "To those who died so others could learn." Vinicius stands among the crowd, silent, reflective. Around him are survivors, scientists, doctors, humanity's new generation of guardians. Dr. Sharma delivers a speech. We thought progress meant control, but real progress means coexistence. The world didn't end. It adapted, and so must we always. As the crowd bows their heads, a soft wind moves through the trees. It feels like the planet itself exhaling. Later that evening, Hannah and Eric sit on the steps outside the United Nations building, looking at the city lights. Do you think we'll ever stop fighting them? Eric asks. Hannah shakes her head. No, but maybe one day we'll stop fighting ourselves. He laughs quietly. That's a bigger challenge. She smiles. Then we'd better start now. They watch as drones carrying medical supplies fly overhead, streaking across the night sky like shooting stars. Humanity's fragile, persistent pulse. In Sao Paulo, Marcella walks home after another long day. She passes a mural painted on a hospital wall, a giant depiction of microscopic life, bacteria, viruses, phages, intertwined in colors of blue and gold. Beneath it, the words, "We are all connected." She stops, tracing the design with her eyes. For the first time in years, she feels peace. A nurse passing by waves. Going home, doctor? Marcella nods. Yes, finally. The city hums with life. People eating, laughing, living. The world didn't end. It adapted. Back in Geneva, as dawn breaks again, Anika steps outside the WHO building. Snowflakes drift through the cold air. She tilts her head up, watching them melt against her gloves. For a moment, she imagines them as bacteria. Tiny, countless, unstoppable, and smiles. You win some, she says softly. You lose some, but we're still here. Her phone buzzes with new data. Another mutation, another beginning. She tucks it away and keeps walking. In the end, it wasn't the discovery of antibiotics that defined humanity. It was how we faced their failure together, because every species must evolve to survive. And the greatest adaptation of all is compassion. If you found this story eye-opening, share it. Spread awareness, not fear, because the war against microbes is far from over. But with knowledge, science, and unity, humanity always has a fighting chance.